Assalamualaikum and good morning everyone. So today we are going to discuss about the B cell, the T cells, as well as antigen presenting cells, right, APCs. Okay, and the next lesson then only we'll be discussing about the adaptive immune response, okay, which is comprised of the cell mediated and humoral immune response. Okay, so now you can see here these are the important cells that is involved in the adaptive immune response, right? Okay, by now you should be able to differentiate, right? We should differentiate between adaptive immune response and the innate immune response. Right now, let's focus on this adaptive immune response as well as the cells that are involved in this adaptive immune response. Right? Okay, so this is the stem cell. Right? From stem cell, all right, we have these myeloid and lymphoid. Okay, from myeloid we have megakaryocytes. All right, and we have our red blood cell. We have the mast cell, which is involved in the allergic reactions, right? Mast cells. And we have this myeloblasts. From myeloblasts, we have granulocytes and agranulocytes. I'm sure you have learned about granulocytes and agranulocytes, right, in form 4, form 5, all right, can't recall, right? And when it comes to granulocytes, we have basophil, neutrophil, and eosinophil, right? So I forgot about the megakaryocyte. Okay, megakaryocyte will develop into thrombocytes, which involve in the blood clotting process. Okay, all right, now the other agranulocyte, all right, is monocytes. These monocytes develop into macrophage and dendritic cells. All right, these macrophage and dendritic cells, okay, they are the APC, antigen presenting cell. All right, I will go into that part later. Okay, so from myeloid, okay, you have megakaryocyte, erythrocyte, mast cell, and these granulocytes and agranulocyte, right? That is the macrophage and dendritic cell that develop from the monocyte. Now, this lymphoid cell, right? From this lymphoid cell, okay, we have this natural killer cell. Okay, natural killer cell. Okay, NK cell, right? And then we have this natural killer cell. They are type of granulocytes under the lymphoids, right? And another agranulocyte under the lymphoid is the small lymphocytes, right? So from the small lymphocyte, it developed into T lymphocyte and B lymphocytes. This T lymphocyte also known as the T cell, and B lymphocyte also known as the B cells, right? And these B cells, all right, they develop into plasma cell, which I will further explain or elaborate later. Right? Okay, so let me rephrase that. From myeloid, we have thrombocytes, red blood cell, mast cell, and basophil, neutrophil, eosinophil, as well as macrophage and dendritic cell. Right? These are the APCs, antigen presenting cell. Right? From the lymphoid cell, we have the natural killer cell, NK cell. Right, and then we have the T cell and B cell. Do take note that this natural killer cell are granulocyte type of cell, while this small lymphocyte is a agranulocyte cell. Oh my goodness, lidah pun berbelit-belit tersebut. All right, okay, next. Now, this diagram here shows you the interactions between these white blood cells, right? They came, right, from your bone marrow stem cells, right? They came from your bone marrow stem cells, right? So as what I've mentioned earlier, from the monocyte, we have the macrophage and dendritic cell, right, which behave, all right, or function as antigen presenting cell. Okay, now apparently, all right, there is another cell that can behave or function as an antigen presenting cell, which is the B cell, right? Okay, now these small lymphocytes, right? Small lymphocyte, as what I mentioned earlier, okay, it developed into B cell and T cell, right? T cell apparently is known as T cell because the lymphocyte matured in the thymus. Remember, do you recall the location of your thymus? All right, I did mention this a number of times during our class. While the B cell, right, is a type of the lymphocyte that mature in the bone marrow. So meaning to say, the lymphocytes that stays in the bone marrow for maturity, they are known as the T cell when they are matured. While the lymphocyte that travel, all right, sorry, the lymphocyte, okay, let me rephrase that. The lymphocyte that stays in the bone marrow, right, stays in the bone marrow, B for bone, right, those lymphocytes will develop into B cell, all right, when they are matured. While the lymphocytes that originally, okay, synthesized in the bone marrow, they travel through the thymus for maturity. Those lymphocytes are known as the T cell, right? Now, when already matured, this T cell will migrate to the lymph organs. All right, the same goes for the B cell. They matured in the bone marrow. After they already reach maturity in the bone marrow, this B cell also will migrate to the lymph organs. Okay. Now, this T cell, all right, there are many types of B cell or T cell, right? There are many types of T cell, right? We have the helper T cell, we have the cytotoxic T cell, all right? Okay, and then memory T cells, all right? These memory T cells, apparently, it came from the helper T cells, right? Then we also have suppressor T cells. We discuss on that later. And apparently, this cytotoxic T cell and helper T cell, they are involved in the cell-mediated immunity. Okay, and these B cells, right, that migrate to lymph organs, right, will develop into plasma cell and memory B cell. This plasma cell is important, okay, or involved in the antibody-mediated immunity or humoral immune response. Okay, all right. Okay, now this diagram here to show you, right, from our bone marrow, okay, we have the stem cells, right, like I mentioned earlier. Okay, from the stem cells, okay, it developed into lymphocytes. From lymphocytes, all right, the lymphocytes that mature in the bone marrow, known as the B cells, and the lymphocytes that mature in the thymus, known as the T cell. All right, and both cells, T cells and B cells, right, they have antigen receptors on their surface. All right. Okay. So now this diagram here to show you, all right, how do these antigen receptors look like on the surface of the B cells. Do take note that this B cell, although they have this antigen receptor, do you recall which type of antigen receptor is this? Okay, is it the IgG? I can't recall. All right, you should, by the way. All right, this antigen receptor on the surface of the B cell, also known as the immunoglobulin, right, or antibody. And this B cell, although they have this antigen receptor or immunoglobulin on their surface, right, this B cell also has the capability to secrete out this antigen receptor or antibody, right? So if you're wondering where on earth your antibody came from, it's being secreted by your B cell, right? Now, let's go to your T cell. On the surface of your T cell, they are antigen receptor, and this antigen receptor apparently cannot be secreted out from the T cell. It stays on the surface of the T cell, right? Right, so this is how the B cell look like, and this is the T cell, right? Now, in comparison between a T cell with a platelet, okay, a platelet, and a red blood cell or erythrocytes. Okay, this is how they look like from side to side. Now let's dig in to further on T cells, all right, or T lymphocytes. Okay, so T cells, all right, they're responsible mainly for cell-mediated immunity or cell-mediated immune response. All right, although right, in the humoral immune response there are involvement of T cells as well, right? Memang T cell ini pun sibuk bekerja di dalam humoral immune response, tetapi fungsi utama T cell ialah di dalam cell mediated immune response, right? Bukan dalam humoral, walaupun dia ada terlibat, tapi bukan kerja utama di sana, because in the humoral immune response, alright, the main responsibility for the B cell. Alright, that's why here I mentioned the T cells responsible mainly for cell-mediated immunity, right? Or cell-mediated immune response. So these T cells will destroy foreign bodies or infected cells, right? To clarify that, infected body cells. Because this pathogen, when they enters your body, there are some of this pathogen, they will go into your body cells and start to infect your body cells. So these infected body cells will be destroyed by these T cells, right? So T cells originate from stem cells in the bone marrow, right, matured in the thymus and resides in the lymph organs. So after maturity, these T cells will travel by your blood into your lymph organs and stay there, right? All right. Now, maturity of these T lymphocytes are catalyzed by thymosin, right, which is secreted by the thymocytes. Thymocytes are the cells of the thymus, right? So the thymus makes the T cell immunocompetent, okay, which is capable of producing effective immune response after exposure to an antigen, right? Maksud dia, okay, your T cell, okay, is able to give immune response, right, after exposure to an antigen. The moment ada antigen dalam badan kamu saja, okay, T cell kamu ni dia berupaya untuk menghasilkan immune response, right? Itulah maksud immunocompetent, capable of producing effective immune response after exposure to an antigen. So T cells undergoes negative and positive selection in the thymus. Oh my goodness, why is this positive and negative selection pula? Right? Okay, now in negative selection, negative, so it's something bad, right? The T cell that react to self-antigen undergo apoptosis, right? Now, self-antigen ialah antigen which can be found on the surface of your body cells, right? So any T cell that react to your body cells antigen, right, by right, that particular T cell will destroy your body cells, and your body doesn't want this to happen, right? Because sel sendiri kan, takkanlah T cell tu mau bunuh sel badan kamu, habislah badan kamu. So this is a negative selection. So what happens? That particular T cell, mungkin dia tersalah program kan? Okay, it will be involved in programmed cell death. Meaning to say, T cell yang react kepada self antigen will be destroyed, right? So what happens? Water and ions will rush in, okay, into the T cell that shows negative selection, right? And this will lead to the lysis of that particular T cell. So in positive selection, right, positive, something good apparently. In positive selection, the T cells are allowed to mature, all right, allowed to mature as the T cells recognize self-antigens and bind with foreign antigens. So dalam positive selection ni, what happens? T cell ni, dia kenal sel badan kamu. Okay, it recognize the self-antigens. Alright, self-antigen, we need to say antigens or protein receptor that is found on your body cells. So these T cells, it recognizes and it doesn't disturb or destroy or kill your body cells. So these T cells are in the positive selection, right, and allowed to mature in the thymus. And now we have these newly matured T cells, right? Newly matured T cells, right? Okay, now these newly matured T cells that have not bind to any antigen presenting cell, right, are known as naive T cells. Naive T cells, right? Some books they refer these newly matured T cells as virgin T cells, right? So if you come across virgin T cells, naive T cells, sama lah maksudnya. Now each T cells they have different T cell receptor, like the diagram earlier that I show you. Ada kan reseptor di permukaan T cell tu, alright? And surface protein on their plasma membrane to bind with epitopes. Okay, so T cells ni boleh bind dengan epitopes. Memory T cells, alright, memory T cells remains after an infection for rapid secondary immune response. So T cells ni, alright, after a primary immune response, alright, after a primary immune response, T cells will generate memory T cells. Tujuan memory T cells ni ialah supaya T cell itu remember antigen, okay, ataupun pathogen dalam primary immune response itu. So what happens in the next infection, alright, which is the secondary immune response, a rapid immune response will be shown by your memory T cells, because the T cells remembered, alright, the particular antigens during the primary immune response. Alright, so memory T cells remains after an infection for rapid secondary immune response. So there are many types of T cells, but the 4 types that is important in your syllabus, they are, right, first is the suppressor T cell or regulatory T cell. Okay, so this suppressor T cell, they are also known as the regulatory T cell, so Tregs, right? So these Tregs, they are a subpopulation of the helper T cells, right? Helper T cells. TH is helper T cells. So these Tregs regulate the immune responses by release cytokine. It's a chemical, right? By releases cytokine at the end of an infection to suppress activities of the mature B cells and certain T cells. Alright, mature B cells, also known as the plasma cells. Okay. These Tregs also suppress autoreactive T cells that escape the process of negative selection. Remember the negative selection? T cell yang shows reaction towards self-antigen. So these T cells that already escape from the negative selection will be, right, suppressed by the Tregs. Right, now we have induced T cell, right, which is a subpopulation of the helper T cells. All right, and then this induced T cell mediate the development of T cell in the thymus. Okay, this induced T cell also induce the cytotoxic T cells to differentiate into Tregs. All right, cytotoxic T cell, also abbreviated as TC. Right, in the exam, I highly advise you to write cytotoxic T cells instead of TC. The same goes for the regulatory T cell. All right, instead of Tregs like this. Helper T cell, write it in helper, HELPER T cell instead of TH. Okay, and then these induced T cells, they are severely decreased, right, in number in patients suffering from AIDS. What happens kalau tiada induced T cells? Macam mana mau dia mediate the development of T cell in the thymus? Habislah, tiadalah T cell kamu. Alright, because it's not being mediated by the induced T cell. Kalau the number of this induced T cell is decreased, you see, bahayanya AIDS ini. Alright, so jangan kena AIDS lah. Alright, the famous T cell, alright, helper T cell, alright, which is also known as TH or CD4 cells. Okay, helper T cell in the exam, if you want to write as helper T cell boleh, or CD4 cells pun boleh juga. Alright, so this helper T cells, alright, yang ini nampak kan dalam gambar ni. Alright, okay, this helper T cells. Okay, they are lymphocytes with glycoprotein designated CD4 on their plasma membrane surface. Mean to say, okay, di permukaan helper T cell ni ada glycoprotein, and this glycoprotein is being referred as CD4 or labeled as CD4. That's why this helper T cell also known as the CD4 cells, cells that has the CD4 glycoprotein. Okay, alright, this helper T cell is the key, right, to trigger our immune response. Once activated, this helper T cell will divide rapidly, right? Please take note, divide rapidly, and secrete cytokines. Cytokines is a chemical compound, right? I will elaborate in the next video. Alright, divide rapidly and secrete cytokines that activates the B cells, TC cells, the cytotoxic T cells, and macrophages. Right? Once activated, this helper T cell will divide rapidly. So kita ada banyak helper T cell, and then those helper T cell will secrete cytokines, and the cytokines will activate B cells, cytotoxic T cells, and macrophages. Okay, activation of B cells meaning to say that B cells will mature into plasma cells and memory B cells. Right, this part I will elaborate later. Alright, in the humoral immune response. This helper cell involved in humoral immune response and cell-mediated immune response, but mainly helper T cell involved in the cell-mediated immune response. Right? Without the helper T cell, right, your immune system cannot give any response or fight any pathogen that enters your body. Betul kan? Because helper T cell secrete cytokines. That cytokines will activate your B cells, alright, your cytotoxic T cells as well as the macrophage. Kalau your B cells, your cytotoxic T cells, and your macrophage tidak kena activate, what is happening with your immune system? Dia tidak aktif lah, dia tidak boleh bagi respons lah for lawan pathogen, right? And apparently, alright, okay, the HIV, right, they like to kill this helper T cell. So without helper T cell, what happened to your immune system? It collapses. Bye bye. oh my. Alright. Okay, so here I mentioned here cytokines. Alright, they are chemical compound. Alright, or to be more specific, signaling proteins. Protein yang memberi signal that regulate interactions between cells in the immune system. Right, and cytokines, they are important. The important groups of cytokines. Cytokines ni ada banyak jenis. Okay, ada banyak jenis. Right, so yang paling penting cytokines ni ialah jenis interferons, interleukins, and chemokines. Right, now STPM students, for your level, the same goes for the matriculation. Right, the group of cytokines yang paling penting that you must know is the interleukins. Right, we have interleukin 1 and interleukin 2, and each of these interleukin 1 or 2, right, they have different purpose. Alright, different purpose, different function. Alright, so again, cytokines are signaling proteins that regulate interactions between cells in the immune system. Right, and then the most important cytokines is the interleukins. although we have chemokines and interferons. All right. Okay. Right. The last type of T cell, which is the cytotoxic T cells. All right. Also known as the CD8 cells. So CD8 cells meaning to say on the surface of this T cell, okay, they have this CD8 glycoprotein. Okay, you can see here, this is the CD8 glycoprotein, which is on the surface of the cytotoxic T cell. So cytotoxic T cells, okay, they are lymphocytes. Okay, the cytotoxic T cell destroy, okay, cells with foreign antigens. Okay, cells with foreign antigens, virus infected cells, because virus, okay, virus, they don't live on the outside of your body cells. Virus, they will enter, they will go into your body cells. Right? Why? Because it wants to replicate new viruses within or inside your body cells. So those body cells are referred to infected body cells or virus infected cells. Right? So those infected cells are being destroyed by these cytotoxic T cells. Cancer cells, right? That explain why you don't have cancer. Okay, but those with cancer, I have no comment on that matter at this point, right? Because that is on different level, different discussion. Okay, cancer cells, foreign tissue graft, right? And this will lead to transplant rejection. Okay, so the cytotoxic T cell destroy cells with foreign antigens, virus infected cells, cancer cells, foreign tissue graft by binding to the MHC class 1, right? MHC class 1 antigen complex of the body cells or any pathogens, right? If with the pathogens, the cytotoxic T cell will bind with the pathogen epitopes. Alright, now this MHC class 1, right? APC will produce MHC class 2, but your body cells will produce MHC class 1. Alright, later I will further elaborate on these types of MHC class 1 and class 2 and how they are different from each other. Now, the cytotoxic T cells are stimulated by interleukin 2 from the helper T cell. Right? They are stimulated by the interleukin 2 from the helper T cell. Now, there are two ways how you can write this interleukin 2. Either capital I, capital L dash 2, or capital I interleukin dash 2. Right? Now, when the cytotoxic T cell, alright, stimulated by this interleukin 2 from the helper T cell, alright, the cytotoxic T cell will stimulate it, right, or stimulate the release of perforin, okay, that will puncture the infected body cells or pathogens. This causes water and ions to rush in and leads to the lysis of the infected cell. Okay, via apoptosis process. You can see here, this is the apoptosis process. Okay, you can see from this diagram here, the cytotoxic T cell, all right, bind with the MHC class 1, right, MHC class 1, and form MHC class 1 antigen complex, right, with the infected body cells. Next, stimulated by interleukin 2 from the helper T cell, the cytotoxic T cell will secrete perforin. Right, this perforin will puncture the infected body cells. So what happens after that? Water and ions will rush in to the infected body cells via apoptosis. And what happens to the body cells? The infected body cells, it will lyse, all right, or undergoes lysis, and bye-bye. Naive cytotoxic T cell secretes cytokines, okay, that causes naive cytotoxic T cells to proliferate. Alright, other word for proliferate is undergoes clonal expansion, meaning to say proliferate ni ataupun clonal expansion maksudnya ialah naive T cell ni, alright, dia jadi banyak dalam masa yang singkat, dia duplicate diri dia jadi sangat banyak, right, to produce activated cytotoxic T cell and memory cytotoxic T cells. So apparently bukan helper T cell sahaja yang produce memory helper T cell, tapi cytotoxic T cell also produce memory cytotoxic T cells, right? And always remember class, when a naive, alright, cytotoxic T cells proliferates, right, it will produce activated cytotoxic T cell and memory cytotoxic T cells. Okay, so here in this diagram here you can see, okay, this is the cytotoxic T cells that surrounds these cancer cells, because cancer cells, they will display different antigens on its surface, right? These cancer cells trying to take over your body. So your cytotoxic T cells notice this, so they surround these cancer cells, right, and they attack by binding on the surface or epitopes of these cancer cells. So apoptosis occurs. You can see how water already rush in as well as ions into the cancer cells. Boleh nampak kan ada lubang ni, ni lubang ni, right, this is the porphyrin, alright. So ini bye-bye, hanya tinggal fibrous cytoskeleton saja. Okay, fibrous cytoskeleton of the cancer cells, right. Yang ini pula nak berambus ni. Okay, I'm going out, bye-bye. Alright, macrophages. Alright, macrophages, they are large phagocytes that develop from monocytes, the non-granular white blood cell in the bone marrow stem cell. Okay, monocytes travel in the blood and develop into macrophages once they are settled into body tissues. Alright, so apparently monocytes akan travel dalam darah kamu, okay, dan jadi macrophage. Alright, jadi macrophage bila dia sudah settle di body tissues. So some remains in the body tissues while some ingesting foreign matters in the blood. Right? So macrophage yang remain di body tissues ni, dia akan jadi, nama dia ialah spesifik, di mana body tissue tu dia resides, dia duduk. Alright, contohnya cover cells in the liver. So macrophage that resides in your liver, those macrophages are known as the cover cells, right? Capital K, you know, with double P. Alright, so macrophage yang dalam darah kamu tu, nama dia macrophage saja. Right, dia specific macrophage. So dia akan continue ingesting foreign matters like microbes, antigens, worn-out cells. Right, macrophages releases cytokines to enhance inflammatory response. Okay, macrophage identify and engulf microbes or antigens marked with antibodies. Remember in the antigen-antibody interactions, right, in the opsonization, what happens, or agglutination, what happens? Antigens are being marked with the antibody, or they are being stick with the antibody. So antigen yang sudah melekat dengan antibody ni, senanglah macrophage makan dia. Right? Now macrophages acts as antigen presenting cell, right, or APC, and involves in cell mediated immune response and antibody mediated immune response. So if you're wondering what is APC, right? APC, right, or antigen presenting cell, is a cell that displays foreign antigens as well as its own surface proteins. Dendritic cells, macrophages, and B cells are APCs. Okay, so meaning to say APC ni ialah, alright, macam macrophage. This permukaan macrophage ini ada surface protein dia sendiri, alright, dan juga ada foreign antigen. So meaning to say macrophage ni bila dia makan pathogen, alright, pathogen tu punya epitopes, macrophage ni akan display di surface dia nanti, di surface macrophage tu. So on the surface of the macrophage ada macrophage tu punya protein sendiri, dia punya own receptor, ada juga foreign antigen di sana. Right? Okay, now the process of this APC I will further explain later in the next class. Right? So now these are the names of fixed macrophages in various tissues. Right? We have alveolar macrophage, right, or dust cells, and they resides in your lungs. We have histiocyte, right? These are the macrophage that resides in your connective tissue, cover cell in your liver. Microglial cell, these are the macrophage that resides in your neural tissues, right, dalam sistem saraf kamu. Osteoclast, osteo mean tulang, so macrophage that can be found in your bone, those macrophage are known as the osteoclast, right? And then the sinusoidal lining cell can be found in your spleen. Alright, the last one for today, B lymphocytes, which is known as the B cells. Okay, these B cells originate from stem cells in the bone marrow. Maturity in bone marrow, right? And matured into plasma cells. These plasma cells, which is the matured B cell, produce specific antibodies. Located, okay, your B cells located in the blood circulatory system and lymph organs. Each matured B cells only has one type of antibody receptor on its plasma membrane. Activation of B cells involves helper T cells, right, and proteins on the surface of pathogens, stimulated by both cytokines and antigen. So, dua cara how these B cells are being activated, right? Melalui helper T cells ataupun protein on the surface of pathogens. Once activated, B cell will proliferates, okay, jadi banyak yang cepat, into plasma cells, right, and memory B cells. So plasma cells will produce specific antibodies, while the memory B cells is for the rapid secondary response. Main role in immune system is to carry out humoral immune response, right, or antibody-mediated immunity. Okay, now this humoral immune response or antibody-mediated immunity, right, what happens is that antibodies are produced by these B cells in response to specific antigens. Okay, B cells undergoes negative and positive selection, macam T cell juga, right, in the bone marrow. So in negative selection, what happens? B cell that react to self-antigen undergo apoptosis. Bye-bye. In positive selection, the B cells are allowed to mature, right, in the bone marrow, because the B cells recognize the self-antigens and bind with the foreign antigens, right? B cells that have not bind any antigen are known as naive B cells or virgin B cells. Most antigens, right, recognized by B cells contain multiple epitopes. And exposure to a single antigen will activate a variety of B cells, which give rise to different plasma cells producing many different antibodies, right, directed against different epitopes on the common antigen. Maksud dia, right, if you recall epitopes that I've discussed earlier, right, on the surface of a pathogen ada antigens, dan antigen ini ada banyak epitopes, right? So, ada banyak epitopes, maksudnya satu antigen akan menyebabkan satu B cell menghasilkan banyak jenis antibody, sebab different antibody akan bind with different epitopes. Let's say on the surface of one pathogen, okay, on the surface of this one pathogen yang ada antigen ni, right, on the antigen ada 5 epitopes di atas antigen ini. So, berapa jenis antibody boleh dihasilkan oleh B cell? 5 jenis antibody lah. Satu antibody akan bind dengan satu jenis epitopes. So, kalau satu antigen tu ada 5 epitopes, ada 5 jenis antibody yang akan dihasilkan. Right? Okay, so that's it for today. Right? Thank you. Bye.